my focus just kept going back to the theater. So even when I was, writing theses and papers on whatever sort of ethnic studies topic I was asked to cover, I always ended up sort of doing it through the lens of, this is how movies presented dark-skinned actors versus light-skinned actors. This is what in the history of film, this is how the gay characters were often the villain. And they were not explicitly gay, but there was always this arch sort of camp character who was twirling his mustache, who the audience sort of recognized as gay, even though no one ever, there was not a boyfriend or a lover or a, glory hole or whatever. But so that's the kind of stuff I was always talking about when I was doing these papers where I was studying people. So it always ended up going back to theater and film. So I just felt like if that's what I'm interested in, I should probably keep focusing on that.
We've all been put here for a reason, and we all deserve acceptance.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.
I'm a trauma survivor from a really young age, and I have been diagnosed with complex PTSD in the past few years. I've been surrounded by death and abuse much of my life. I've been dragged through the mud and have been to the point of not wanting to go on anymore. Through my interviews with other survivors, I've learned that there is a way out. From recovering to surviving and thriving, we all have the strength to come out the other side.
You are listening to Judging Meghan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Judging Meghan. I am your host, Meghan Judge. I am so honored today to have my guest on. I'm just going to go right into introducing him. His name is Daryll Stephens. I have known him for many years. He's one of the most handsome people I've ever met in my life. He's an actor. Don't say ew. You know it's true. He also does not age, which I don't understand it, and it's really freaking unfair. You know who else is like that? Is my husband. He just doesn't.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're married to Ron Melendez. How is it even?
He doesn't. Like, I'm sitting here I'm about to start putting like poo on my face to just like stop the hands of time. And like, I'll do anything at this point. And like you two just don't, you just like have frozen in time. It's not fair. Okay. Audience, Daryll he's funny, he's famous, and he's fabulous. And you might know him if you have watched the TV show Noah's Ark, which he's known for. Also, most recently, he was a series regular on a show on CBS called Be Positive. He also is a dad, and we share like the best, most amazing friend in common named Stephen Bowman. Shout out Bowman, because I know you're going to listen to this. And welcome to the podcast 3 years in. I finally got you on.
Thank you so much.
How are you today?
It's been hard. Well, I have a 2.5-year-old, so I'm running around all the time chasing her now. So and we're also doing construction. So listeners, if you hear banging or saws buzzing, please do not be offended. Upstairs is almost done. I couldn't get the contractor to stop today, but we're going to try to.
It's okay. Right now, I can't hear it. And, a lot of my listeners happen to be moms and dads, and have children. So I think people can understand what it's like to have a 2.5-year-old. I also, now my kids, believe it or not, are 13 and 9, which is crazy.
Your kid is 13?
I have a 13-year-old. Yeah. Can you believe that?
Oh my God, I've not seen her since.
Like, she was a baby, probably.
I feel like last time I saw her, she was in a car seat.
I know. So
she was big, but in a car seat.
So Darryl and I have known each other, like, let's backpedal a little bit, for years and years. Like, since Ron and I probably were first together, I met you. So that's like 20 plus years, right?
It's almost 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And
acting class way back. Yeah.
Were you in acting class with Ron?
I was.
Okay.
That's not where you and I met. I think I got into class after. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And this one day, I just have to tell you my audience this story because it's so funny. This one day, one of his best friends, Stephen Bowman, who I've had on the podcast, who honestly, like, nobody on the planet makes me laugh harder than Bowman. He's the funniest person I've ever met. Like, even looking at him, like, he can make me laugh harder than anyone else on the planet. And this one day, I see Darryl and Stephen at the Grove, And Stephen and I have just always done like the dumbest stuff. Like when we were in our 20s, we would dive into bushes, like not knowing if there was anything in the bush, but we would think it was really, really funny to just like go dive into a bush. And this one day we're at the Grove, and this was when there was still Abercrombie with the models,
Abercrombie and Fitch,
and they stood outside, and it was like a cloud of like cologne, like flying into your face. And
fierce cologne.
It was just like you would walk by, and these guys like with like 12 packs would just be like, it's such a weird thing if you think about
very weird.
Their advertising.
Very LA.
So LA. Yeah. And this one day I see them across, like, I think I saw you like all the way across the other side of the Grove. And I just like go like flying and do like a flying leap, like Patrick Swayze style onto my foot. And I go, surprise, like right in front of the Abercrombie model, who was just like standing there, like had no idea what to do. He was so mortified. And so to this day,
and so now every time I see Meghan now, it's surprise.
Like anytime I see you or I see Stephen, I'm like, surprise, surprise, like everything's surprise. So anyway, that's how we're going to start out today's episode. Daryl,
good times.
I just want to talk about you for the next little bit that we're together. Tell my audience, let's start out here. You're an actor, you're a successful actor. You've lived in LA for years and years like me. I would love to know your backstory, like where you grew up, where you're from. Let's start there.
Yeah, I love the idea that you're calling me a successful actor, because, actors never feel like they've succeeded ever,
Wow.
Ever. However, we can start with at the very beginning. The Scientology, the big blue Scientology building on Fountain in the 70s, that was called the Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. I was born there. Before it was the Scientology Center, it was a hospital. I was born there. For years, I thought I was born at the Children's Hospital because I saw the address was on Fountain, and I was like, "Oh yeah, the Children's Hospital." But I looked it up, and no, it was that building, that big blue building. Anyway, grew up in Altadena and Pasadena. My mother and father split when I was very young, probably too young to remember. My mother remarried around the time I was 5. I have a younger brother who's, I guess I was around 4. I have a younger brother who's about 5.5 years younger than I am. We grew up in Altadena, which is like 40 minutes from LA east and maybe a little north. And I went to school in Berkeley, so we're going to skip high school until we get into that conversation. Oh no, we could do high school, because I was in high school. I was in, they had electives. You could either do gym class, football. You could do gym class, which means you were running around chasing balls in shorts and tank tops, or you could do a sport. In my first year of high school, I was a swimmer. I played water polo. I don't recommend it. It is the hardest thing anybody has ever asked me to do. Water polo you're just drowning the whole time. Like if you're not an amazing swimmer, you're dead. So that didn't last. I did that my first year of high school, and then there was a dance class at my high school. This was in the this would be 1990, 89, 90. So I joined the dance class, putting a target on my back, but it was what I wanted to do. And I joined the show choir. So I was in a very sports-centered high school, dancing and doing show choir. Like it was our football team was like district or whatever, area champs. And I was like running around in tights and singing show tunes. So imagine that kid.
Yeah.
But at a predominantly Black and Latino high school.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to college, went to UC Berkeley, I decided I wanted to continue performing or have at least some sort of creative outlet somewhere while I was studying whatever I was going to be studying to get whatever degree I was going to get. Like, you don't know it when you're, starting college, what you're going to do. And in the acting class that I took, I just really got caught up in, I do like being on stage and actually speaking. Like most of my experience up until that point had been dancing and singing. But then there's this whole other thing of like exploring a character, which I hadn't really done in high school. So got into that and got cast in a few plays and really just never left the stage or the spotlight. From there, I just kept doing plays and then moved back to LA and, got into booked a couple movies and a couple commercials and, just kept doing that.
Did you, when you were in high school, were you like teased because you were doing theater, or at that point you were dancing and doing show choir? Was that something that was difficult to deal with?
There was a power in the, first of all, yes, there were definitely some jocks, some rougher around the edges dudes who took issue with the fact that I was also just sort of a soft, sweet kid. I wasn't running around with swagger or super macho, energy.
Yeah.
And at a school like that, that sometimes, again, puts a target on your back. But then because I leaned into what I was interested in, performing, and, I was, I guess, okay at it, they almost kind of backed off. I think the first year I was doing dance, there was some raised eyebrows and some snickering. And then, also to my credit, I was choreographing songs myself, dances to songs by Prince, with a bunch of beautiful girls, putting myself at the center. So a lot of the football players then like, yo, what's up with, Camille? Can you hook me up with Tiffany? And, that kind of stuff. So it became a different energy, but it was really about figuring out how to make what I was doing work in that environment. And somehow I was savvy enough at that young age to sort of maneuver and navigate through that.
What I love too is that you just like owned it. I think that's
the only way to do it.
Yeah.
That's the only way to do it, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, you and I grew up around the same time. And I think that, I grew up doing theater my whole life. And I know the boys that were in theater with me were teased. And I just feel like if it's something that you're passionate about, especially if you're good at it, I think that as long as you own something, maybe I'm wrong and I'm being naive, but I think that's the best way to go about like bullies in general. You're like, you have a problem with it. And I tell my kids that all the time. I think that's really important. And I talk a lot about bullying.
Agreed. I think it really does change the whole bullying dynamic if you're owning everything that you are. Now, granted, I was not walking around with a rainbow flag saying, yes, I'm a gay man.
Yeah.
It was just, I'm the performer kid who is going to make his way his own way. I'm not going to do what you guys are doing, throwing balls around, getting knocked in the head, and, hurting my ankle.
Yeah.
Doing that. I may do the splits and hurt myself, but I'm not going to do it, bumping into some idiot on the football field.
Yeah.
So it was just a different approach. And I think that there is power in owning what you're doing. Granted, like you said, there are environments where that does not work.
Yeah.
I happen to have been in one where it worked. So I was very lucky in that sense.
And then you went on to Berkeley, which obviously is a very hard school to get into. Did you go to school for theater, or what did you go to Berkeley for?
No, my family is primarily in education. So I was sort of expecting to come out with some sort of a degree in something that would allow me to become a teacher or go into education. A lot of what I was interested in at that point was like ethnic studies, African American studies, sociology, things like that. So I was thinking it was going to be a lot of how do people interact with other people? What are the, even gay and lesbian studies? I was doing that because I came out like probably the moment I stepped onto campus. I was like, hey, I'm here and I'm gay. But because I was doing theater, because I was doing this, I started in this acting class that sort of just, I really just felt like I needed to maintain some creative outlet after doing dance and show choir in high school. My focus just kept going back to the theater. So even when I was, writing theses and papers on whatever sort of ethnic studies topic I was asked to cover, I always ended up sort of doing it through the lens of this is how movies presented dark-skinned actors versus light-skinned actors.
Mm-hmm.
This is what in the history of film, this is how the gay characters were often the villain. And they were not explicitly gay, but there was always this arch sort of camp character who was twirling his mustache, who the audience sort of recognized as gay, even though no one ever, there was not a boyfriend or a lover or a, glory hole or whatever. But so that's the kind of stuff I was always talking about when I was doing these papers where I was studying people. So it always ended up going back to theater and film. So I just felt like if that's what I'm interested in, I should probably keep focusing on that. So I ended up graduating with an American Studies degree, which is sort of like just a culture, American culture. What is American culture about? And obviously that is shifting every day. We're learning more and more about what American culture really is, what it's always been, and where it's going. So, but in the 90s when I was in school, it was a very interesting sort of interdisciplinary field where you could pull in ethnic studies, African American studies, gay and lesbian studies, all these sociology, all these different fields, and sort of talk about what you were interested in. And so what I talked about was Black folks and queer folks in film.
Let me ask you a question just to like kind of piggyback on that. You have been in this industry a long time, right? So you probably started, I looked at your resume because I was curious as to like when you started booking. I know you started acting in college, but the span of when I moved to Hollywood, obviously like your friend Meghan never succeeded as an actress. It's okay. I'm doing okay right now. But I was auditioning, at I think I moved here in 1999, almost 2000. And I was
moved here in 97.
Worst cocktail waitress on the planet. Dropped every drink, got fired from the Sky Bar, got fired from like every cocktailing job. I was cute back then. Bar. And I had abs, which if you know the Sky Bar, you had to wear the tight tank top. Anyway, got fired. Got fired from like numerous cocktailing and bartending jobs. But my question to you on a serious note is the industry has like almost like run so quickly in the past like 5 years, like from it being like you are categorized as the Black gay actor best friend, right? That was like in the late 90s, 2000s. And now you're seeing like so much diversity in casting, which is like, this has been needed forever. But I'm just curious as to like your thoughts on that. And then also having your background of like what you studied in college and like got your degree in, like, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like, I'm assuming you must feel like part of you is torn, and this is me answering for you, but this is like how I'm putting myself in your body. Like, well, why did it take this long? And now is it like almost like a little like too late? Like, I'm just curious. I would love to have your thoughts on that.
Well, what I'm seeing is a violent reaction to the diversification of characters and stories on television and film. Yes, it's been a long time coming. Yes, we needed to have, what we didn't talk about in my little introduction, or you did mention, but I didn't, was the show Noah's Ark, which I was on from 2005 to 2008. It was 2 seasons in a movie.
And made you like, that's how you're kind of like a household name. Like people in the industry know you. I know.
I am not in any way. I mean, I'm in a Black gay household name, but like no one else knows who I am.
Well, Ryan Murphy knows who you are. I'm obsessed with Ryan. Anything Ryan Murphy touches, I'm like, I love you, Ryan Murphy. Like, make whatever you make and I'll watch it. So proceed. Go on.
Yeah, and at that time, Noah's Ark is a show very similar to Sex and the City or Girlfriends or even Golden Girls, about 4 best friends. But in this case, they were 4 Black gay men in Los Angeles, each of them with the very distinct, personality. One of them was very promiscuous. One of them was very sassy. One of them was naive and artistic. That was me, the romantic lead. And and one of them was an academic. And what that showed really sort of changed on the whole landscape of television and film was, we can center these characters. This was in 2005. We can center these characters in an entire show and then a movie. Quiet as It's Kept, 2 movies. There's another movie coming out no one knows about yet. But these characters can be centered and these stories can be compelling and people will watch this show. And I think that what the fear has been is that if white men aren't at the center of stories, we can't. No, how is America gonna sit through it, right? Even women-centered stories have been few and far between. Like particularly women over the age of 40.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things are sort of shifting. We just saw Michelle Yeoh win an Academy Award for,
which is crazy. I was so excited.
Everything. Yeah. Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it was just like, yes. First of all, amazing that an Asian woman finally won an Academy Award. Embarrassing that we're 95 years in. That was the 95th Oscars. But then also something that I haven't heard discussed quite as much is the fact that she's an older woman. She's a woman over 50.
She's 62, I think. I might be wrong on that.
At the top of her game.
Yeah.
That movie, if you saw it, she's doing everything, everywhere, all at once. So the fact that we're seeing that now is amazing. And yes, embarrassing that it's taken us this long to see that. And I would not be shocked if there was another backlash. Where every time somebody makes a little progress who's not white and male and cisgender and heterosexual, this country has some like violent backlash to it. So congratulations to her, and I don't want to take anything away from her, but I do think we have to now brace ourselves for this. We've already seen with the former guy's vilification of the Chinese when COVID dropped. Mm-hmm. Anti-Asian violence skyrocketing. So it's just like every time something happens that does not center white men, this country has a violent reaction to it. So I will say, yes, we're making progress in television and film. However, what we're also seeing is, RuPaul's had a show on for 15 years now?
Longer than that.
This year? 15, maybe 16 years.
Yeah.
This year, starting probably last year, all these state representatives started becoming hysterical about drag queens and the danger that they're posing to children. No drag queen is interested in your child. Worry about your pastor, right? Worry about the preacher at your Catholic church before you worry about a drag queen. No, that's not even an issue. But because the Republicans have now been elected into power, they're now controlling the Senate. And they don't want to do anything. They don't want to actually solve any problems. They don't want to deal with gun violence, which is
don't get me started.
Huge.
Don't get me started. Yeah.
Let me just say into a frenzy about.
Let me just say one thing about what you're saying, because I really feel extremely passionate about this. And what's weird to me is it's like talking out of two sides of your mouth, right? Like here we are hiring Black and Asian actors, and women over 60 are winning Oscars, and women over 60, by the way, are looking hot and good and taking care of ourselves. I mean, look at her. She looks amazing. And so what it does, and I'm like an aging woman living in Los Angeles. I happen to be a white woman and I understand my privilege and I don't think it's right, the privileges that white people have, but don't get me started on that. But it's so weird to me that the industry seems to be going in a direction that's the complete opposite of what we're going in our country. Like I say a lot of times, I'm like, I don't remember like the maybe it's just because I'm too Pollyanna, but I've been going to drag shows and like watching drag like since I was like a teenager. This is just it's performance. It's performance art. If you go to a drag show, and if you're, by the way, listening to this and you want to turn it off because we're getting political, then maybe it's not the right podcast for you, because I feel extremely passionate about these topics. And it actually breaks my heart, to be honest, because I do know performers that do drag, and this is their livelihood and they're good at it. Just like a lot of other industries, you can be in all different kinds of industries, but it's not right that you're putting judgments like they have something wrong with them because they're dressing up and performing. It's performance art. It's been going on since the beginning of time. People in Egypt were dressing in drag. So like, it doesn't make any sense that this is something that people are all fired up about. And it really infuriates me because it's like, it seems like the industry is like going one direction. And then there's people that all of a sudden you're living in Florida, and my mom lives in Florida and I have friends in Florida, but like, who are you to tell somebody that they cannot say gay, that they cannot be gay? Like, this is not like where we should be, and we are in time. And and I talk a lot about this because I say, I'm very passionate about this. I happen to be a straight woman, but half of my friends are gay. And I will tell you that I have had numerous conversations since I was a young girl with gay young men that have told me in college they wanted to commit suicide because they were too afraid to come out of the closet. Not feeling accepted, not like feeling like there's something wrong with themselves. And then to have somebody and like come as far as we are, having laws turned over, like, I'm sorry, but how dare you? Like, and what you just brought up about guns, I'm very passionate about gun control as well. Like, why are we not paying attention to things that really matter? Like, being a parent, you'll find this out in a few years. You have a 2.5-year-old. It's even scary now for toddlers to go to school. Being a parent, the feeling of every day sending my 2 daughters to school, and somewhere in the back of my mind, knowing like, and I get emotional about this, but having my young daughter tell me, that's 9 in 3rd grade, last week, they did a drill, but there was like an Amber Alert. And she said, Mom, like it was an Amber Alert and we heard this thing, but we knew there wasn't a drill. And so they heard like the alarm. So they all thought that there might be some kind of attack on the school. So to have your kids get in the car, and this is the norm, and we're sitting here, and I'm sorry if I'm like up on my pulpit, because sometimes I do this, and I'm sorry, Darryl, but
no, please continue.
To have this be the norm in our country, and then I'm sorry, but white privileged men are the ones that are stating these opinions and saying it's not okay to say you're gay and it's not okay to go to a drag show. Like, what are you doing to not have our children be afraid to go to school? Like, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And I'm so tired of it. And I think that if you really have the thoughts that you do and you're listening in other parts of the country where maybe you lean red, really like take a look at yourself. And I'm not saying you're a bad person. I would never say that. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I grew up a Republican. I'm very honest about the fact that, yes, I lean in social issues all left. I'm pretty much as left as I can be. Sometimes I lean in the middle in certain issues, but at the end of the day, our country is in big trouble because if we're focusing on a man that dresses up as a woman and performs and makes other people in the audience happy. Like if you've gone to a drag show, you know what it feels like to leave and be happy. You're happy. Like I'll shut up there and I'll let you talk because I'm basically taking up the whole podcast. I'm sorry.
No, but I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. And to your point about people who are listening who are in red states who lean red, I think it's also time for us, you, to really interrogate your news sources and really sort of start to interrogate the people who you're choosing as your leaders, and are they actually leading you anywhere that you want to go? If you think that drag queens are the biggest danger in this country, and Republicans right now are only focused on drag queens and trans folks, And they've made it look like trans folks and drag queens are somehow victimizing children. That parents who are affirming their trans children's identity are somehow harming those children. If you knew the way non-gender conforming children's suicide rates are rising again because of this rhetoric in politics, you're not helping or saving children. You're harming children. And the idea that someone who doesn't know your child can decide how you raise them, how you allow them to dress. Somebody, either Texas or Florida, has, or maybe even Tennessee, just introduced something that would allow for parents of trans children to be arrested, for the child to be taken away, for the parents to go to prison, because they are affirming their children. They are raising their children the way they want to, allowing them to be who they want to be. How is this anyone else's business? It's like gay marriage. How is who I'm married to affecting your life at all? How is it detracting from your marriage at all? It's not. And until you start to really question why the people that you are electing into office are throwing red meat at you like drag queens and trans children, there's not going to be any progress made here. We're all going to be caught up in this sense of us versus them. That's what they're doing. They're keeping you angry at the other. It was Muslims and Mexicans when Trump was elected. Now it's drag queens and trans people. It's always the other. And Black folks have been the other forever. So it's always going to be, how do we vilify them to keep you, white people, normal, white, hardworking white people, from noticing that we are raising your taxes and making it easier for billionaires to not pay taxes. We are allowing your children to be sent to school with guns in anyone's hands who wants to buy them, and we're not dealing with it because the NRA is funding our campaigns. Until you, folks who are listening, who are leaning in that direction, really start to question why they're so focused on folks who have nothing to do with your life. If you don't know any drag queens or trans people, let them be. Let them live their lives. Your children are not in danger at a drag show. The only way a child is going to a drag show is if their parents takes them to a drag show. And it's a brunch setting. They're not going to, gay bars in the middle of the night.
And they're not going to a strip club. Like, nobody's stripping. Like, I don't know what people are thinking.
Drag brunches are entirely harmless. They're lip syncing to Madonna and Lady Gaga. It's a fun show that's entertaining for queer folks and their friends. Drag Queen Story Hour is one of the most delightful things you've ever seen. They are reading storybooks to children, stirring up this whimsical, magical presentation because of, their glitter and huge pink wigs. It's not sexual. No one's grooming your kids. They're making magic for your kids. They're telling stories. It's drag queens are magical. They're not harmful to anyone. So figure out why Ron DeSantis and the dude who keeps getting elected in Texas, who's not Beto O'Rourke, and I don't understand Texas. Let me stop. Why we're still fighting with people who have no power. Why we are vilifying the people who are at the lowest, I can't say totem pole, that's offensive, who are the lowest rung on the ladder in society. Why we keep kicking them further down.
Well, because this is like the history of our country, right? And what's so scary right now is I will never know what it's like to have Black skin. I will never know what it's like to be Asian. I will never know what it's like to walk into a store and be a Black woman. I just won't. I take that for granted, that I automatically am the color of skin that I am. But what I can tell you, my last breath on this planet, as in the body that I'm in, is that I will work to educate myself. And if I do have the platform that I do, then I should be telling people stories of You know, I had a mother on last year that had a trans child, and the pain that she had to go through, the judgment that people cast on her. She's living in like rural Virginia. Do you think that anybody in their right mind, like that's the thing, you always have to understand that because what this really stems from is prejudice. And they say in order to get over a prejudice, you either need to live, work, or actually like spend time with somebody that you don't understand. I think that if a lot of these people, because I know a lot of people that are Republicans and they are not bad people. Some of them happen to be my friends and I've grown up with them and I've known them my whole life. And I know that a lot of them are good people. And maybe they're just being like, the news outlets are just kind of like, it's like constant brainwashing, you know, like constantly putting stuff into people's heads. And then we have people over the age of 60 that are just like at that age where they're just like being constantly brainwashed and lied to, and it's wrong and it's not okay. But what I in my Pollyanna world is if people actually sat with a mother of a young child that was felt from the age of 2 or 3 that they were born in the wrong body. And the mother said to me, I either like had the choice of like wanting my kid to be on this planet or them at some point wanting to not live. Well, I'm going to choose to be the mother of like my now daughter, because I know that it was going in that direction. And this is how I'm raising my child. And then people having to move, all this stuff that goes along. So I think like just to like kind of like talk a little bit more about this conversation is I don't think anybody's trying to take anything away from anybody else. Everything stems from money in this country. So like guns, it's all about money. But it's also about like, I think there is so much going back to like Hollywood. Like there's so many people that are like, well, we want to make changes. Everybody should be represented. Look at what happens when we make a movie and it like does a really insane box office. Like this can happen and it is happening. And I don't know, like just to go backwards a little bit, if that's like you're saying the backlash, like people are going to be like, well, this isn't okay. And you're taking something away from me because I'm a white man and I'm mad that this is being taken away from me. Nobody's saying that. People are saying it's time for everybody to be treated the same. And if you go to church every Sunday and you claim that you're a Christian, at the root of Christianity, I'm a Christian, is about loving thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor. Be kind. Be gracious. Do the right thing. I say a lot, we're here for such a short time in this life. Do you really want to look back on your life when you're older and go, I was an asshole. Like I was racist. I did this. I was mad because somebody was gay and they got married and they don't even live anywhere on my street. You know, like think about that. And I don't know, like all of this stuff like really boils my blood.
So your initial question was,
yeah, like an hour ago.
Is the progress is the progress that or the diversity that we're seeing happening on television reflective of what's happening in the world? I would say Hollywood, as you just said, money. Mm-hmm. It's all about money, right? Hollywood has noticed that these movies about Black folks and Asian folks are actually making a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So they are making more movies that are more reflective of the diversity that actually exists in this country. But I think that along with that, we're seeing, as you just mentioned, white men in particular, feeling like they're no longer centered and that somehow threatens their existence. And I think that, you know, when you have grown up in a country and in a culture that has told you that you basically can do no wrong, that you are entitled to everything, and that everybody who doesn't look like you is the enemy and deserves less than you. Mm-hmm. When the world starts to shift and we start to see Black women and Latina women moving into political positions of power, political power, and we start to see films with, 60-year-old Asian women kicking butt on screen and then winning Oscars, you're going to start to feel like something's being taken away from you. And the truth is, nothing's being taken away from you. Your life is being enriched by witnessing and experiencing things that are outside of your worldview. Drag queens, I don't know how many of you are watching RuPaul's Drag Race. Some of the most, I don't watch reality television. When there was a writer's strike, I don't know, 15 years ago, and all these reality shows started happening, and actors stopped working because there were no writers, so there were no scripted shows, so then the industry became all about reality shows. And so just based on principle, I don't watch any Housewives, I don't watch any of that because I feel like funding that, fueling Jersey Shores and things like that are just exploiting people's messiness and
oh God,
things that don't
Darryl, I
necessarily
don't
reflect-
agree. I watch a lot of Real Housewives. You're talking to the wrong lady. But go on. I get what you're saying.
I'm not even taking that away from you. What I'm saying is,
no, but you're right. You're right.
RuPaul's Drag Race is the only reality show that I watch, and it's because we get to see queer folks take something that they have been doing to survive. Drag, honestly, is a way for those sissy boys who got beat up in high school to find something that they thrive at, make money, make a living, and feel good about themselves. A child molester is going to be a child molester. They're not going to be a drag queen. Drag queens don't have access to children normally. And the ones who are going out of their way to read children's books to children at public libraries are not interested in your children in that way. They want to give back to the community that has allowed them to thrive as drag queens. It's so backwards, the narrative that the conservative media and politicians have sort of thrust us into. Just consider that these people are living their lives the best way they know how. And we're all just trying to get through this life intact, right? That's what we're all trying to do. And some boys, believe it or not, like dressing up as women. We like, as a kid, my mom caught me in her tights once. I'm sure I was wearing heels at some point. I've done drag. Normally it's for a show or, but a TV show or a movie. But the reality is it's fun for us. And we're not taking anything away from real women. Trans folks are not taking anything away from cis people. We are only trying to live our lives. Let us live our lives.
100%.
Let us be who we are. And also understand that in us, in the same breath as us being allowed to be ourselves, you are going to feel like that experience does not reflect my day-to-day life. And you're going to feel like, no, that's not how it's supposed to be. Everything I see on television should be Wally and June Cleaver, folks that look like me, who live like me, who think like me. No, baby. The real world is your neighbor across the street could be speaking a different language. You don't even know it in the house. They could be Iranian, speaking Farsi every day, and you don't know it. They wave and say hello to you. There are different experiences in every single household. Your household, the one that we've all been fed as normal America, white folks in nuclear, two-parent households.
1960s,
Yeah. That's not what everyone's life looks like.
No.
And that's okay.
And it shouldn't, by the way. And it's not going to. That's the thing that
it never even did.
It never did.
The reality of America is we're all about mythology. We're all about we are the best people in the world. We have saved, these savage countries from their savage selves. We're just a bunch of, colonizing imperialists, just like everyone else, who is taking oil from countries who are in turmoil. But the stories that we are telling ourselves to justify that are the same ones that we are telling ourselves, that we are now hearing through conservative media and conservative political folks who are saying that We are the ones who have the truth. We're the only ones who know the answer, and anybody who tells you something different is wrong and taking something away from you. That's not the case. Black folks are not trying to take anything from you. Black folks are not going to get your guns and come at you the way you've come at us. The cops who are killing black folks in the street are not serving you. They're just killing black folks in the street. They're destroying families. It's not, and you talk about the kids who grow up in a fatherless household because their dad was put in prison for 20 years for smoking weed. Y'all smoke weed. Don't act like you don't smoke weed.
Yeah.
But it's black and Latino men who go to prison for 20 years for it. And then those families are disjointed, and then that kid grows up and ends up doing something criminal because his mom can't afford to take care of him. I mean, this is the story that we're constantly telling ourselves. Why does it always go back to gun violence in Chicago? Because that's the narrative your media is teaching you.
Let me ask you a question.
Interracial violence is always the case.
If there was a way, because I spend a lot of time thinking about this actually, like what my piece or what my part is, like what, because sometimes I feel like, oh, I can interview a million people talking about being shot or being in mass shootings. I've interviewed many, and I asked them this question, well, what would you say or what would you do? And it's like, well, I was shot. Like one girl I had on was shot in the eye and now has to, thank God she's alive. She was shot in the head. Now she wears a prosthetic eye. And it's the same thing. It's like, well, what can I do? My hands are tied. What if we all like talked to each other in a way where we could actually educate? So if you're sitting at a Thanksgiving table, for example, and I happen to have a Thanksgiving table where I don't agree with the people sitting at my Thanksgiving table. And I end up getting up and I'm pissed and I'm mad because I feel like I can't say anything, because if I say something, it's just going to turn into a fight, and you're going to say what you think and the other person's going to say what they think. And then somebody storms off and that's the end of Thanksgiving. Right. And I'm using that just as an example because I think that's very common in our country. But like, how are we ever going to make changes unless we really stop being so brainwashed by the news outlets and different things that are said? You know, like, how can we, what my question to you is, how can we talk to each other? What are things we can do? Because you and I agree, like we can get mad all day and throw our arms up. And then the other side, there's some podcast going on right now where somebody is like talking about how DeSantis is right. Nobody's talking to each other. And what would you say? Like, what are things that people can do? And maybe they are listening to this. Maybe I have one person that's listening to this and going, well, maybe like I would be open to hearing that side of things. What would you say? Like, what should we do? I know this is like,
I think that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, your question is the question right now. Mm-hmm. In this country, how do we stop polarizing ourselves with this? You know, I think one of the tricks, quite honestly, is the two-party system has made us against them. Mm-hmm. The Democrats versus the Republicans, and the Democrats are trying to, for the most part, looking towards progress. How do we change for the better? How do we take care of the majority of us? And the Republicans are, how do we put those people down and take care of ourselves? How do we take care of ourselves, right? That's how it feels. That's the sort of, how do we defend ourselves from the other is what the Republicans have sort of set themselves up to
and the
be.
Republicans
and keep your guns.
And the Republicans think that, in all fairness, about the Democrats. So that's why it's like a constant war. What are you taking from me? What are you taking from me? So if we had two sides, two people, like, how do we get each other to freaking sit down and shut up and talk to each other? So we're not sitting here talking about some young Black boy that's walking home and beaten to death, basically. You know, like what is it going to, and for being a woman, I have 2 daughters. You have a daughter. Our reproductive rights have been taken away. Like, what is going on? you know?
I think that for me, the key is, are we focused on helping people?
Mhm.
Are we focused on taking something away from people? And if your focus, I hear the narrative now. What we're doing is trying to protect children from drag queens who are all of a sudden, this just happened in the last 6 months,
Yeah.
right? They're now groomers. I'm hearing on Twitter, anytime I speak in defense of a drag queen or a trans person, groomer. What? That's Fox News. That is straight up out of the mouth of Tucker Carlson and the rest of those people, right? That narrative has been created to make you believe it is okay to take away the rights of somebody else, that those people should not exist. We have to stamp those people out because all of a sudden they are a danger to your children. They weren't. They never have been. If your child is trans or queer, what you want in the world is someone like RuPaul who has a platform to make them believe, give them a sense of there is a safe space for you somewhere in the world. You want that for your queer or trans kid. You don't want them growing up in a world where they can't say gay, where they can't try on your shoes. You want a space where everyone is free to be themselves. Do we want anyone molesting our children? Of course we do not. Queer folks don't want that either. If we're being honest, churches are the places we should be protesting, not drag shows.
Wow.
Because that's the place where the majority of people in the public eye are abusing children. So let's talk about what's actually happening in the world versus the narrative that the conservative media has presented us with, right?
Well, in all fairness, and I just I had a priest recently on a Catholic. I am Catholic. I was born Catholic. For me,
and you know the truth of what's happened in that
and
environment.
I've had
yes.
nothing my entire life except for good experiences. I credit my priest for saving my life, like literally, like
beautiful.
So there are, and I like to say that because just like there's an umbrella of judgment on whatever. Yes, it's very sad. It's very scary. It's very unfortunate, but nobody is going to get in the middle of my faith with God. God is my number one. And then it's me. And like church is just like the layer in between. But yeah, I agree with you because it's a real problem.
But listen, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Church should be the place that saves you.
Yes.
Not the place that makes you feel bad about who you are.
Yes, I agree.
Church should be the place that lifts you up, that brings you and your community together, that brings you closer to your higher power. It should not make you feel like you want to kill yourself. It should not make you feel like your son deserves to die. It should not make you feel like your trans kid should be stamped out, should not have the gender affirming care that they need to feel like they're the best version of themselves. That's not what church should be about.
Well, I think,
it should not be a place where anybody
needs
goes.
to modernize. And I think, believe it or not, like in every faith, it is like, but it's taking time to.
The Pope is speaking.
Yeah,
the Pope is speaking like the most progressive person in the public right now. I feel like, yes, that Pope, this person right here is teaching us where our thinking as a culture needs to go. Stop vilifying and beating down these people who are not doing anything but trying to live their best lives.
Well, we're also lucky because we live in Los Angeles. So like my church has an LGBTQ plus group. Like they have a group of, parishioners and they have their meetings and everything. We're very fortunate to live in a melting pot of Los Angeles.
Yes.
But picture being in like the middle, and I don't want to say a state, I'll just say somewhere in the South, and there's no support.
Or even just the middle of the country.
Middle of the country.
Yeah.
And there's no support, and you're sitting here and like, not to bring back the trans topic, but your kids identifying as like saying they don't want to be here. They would like to take their own life, or I would like to wear a pair of heels and tights. Like, really? Because I think that if parents really understood this, or they had a child that was trans or gay and didn't want to live because they didn't they knew their parents wouldn't love them or accept them because what they're preaching or what they're hearing on the news, to really have that child and understand what it's like as a parent is really different than just spewing out words of hate, because that's what it comes down to. You're not loving thy neighbor.
And listen, I'm a new parent, right? My kid's 2.5 years old. The love and protectiveness I feel for this kid, I did not know was in my body.
Yeah.
Right? So now I hear about queer kids who are kicked out of their house. They come out to their parents. And I think, how on earth do you as a parent justify kicking your 15-year-old kid out of the house because he has a crush on a boy? How do you, in your brain, after having stayed up sleepless nights, feeding this child, changing their diaper, teaching them to use the potty, where on earth does your heart go? Does your heart go when you say, okay, because of who you love, because of something that was natural to you, get out of my house? I cannot imagine. I cannot, from the depths of my soul, figure out how a parent could do that to their child. Now, given that, if your kid is queer, where's their safe space? Are you their safe space? Is RuPaul's Drag Race that they're sneaking and watching in the middle of the night their only safe space? I'm giving RuPaul a lot of play. There are other shows. Noah's Ark was a safe space for a lot of Black queer kids in 2005 and 2006, and to this day. And I think that what we need to remember is that not everybody thinks the way we do. There are shows on TV that right now that I'm like, who the hell? The Housewives are a perfect example. Thank you, Meghan, for being somebody who watches that and thinks, this is entertaining to me. I don't understand it at all.
Yeah.
They're women being mean to each other. Why are we watching that?
Okay, you should
life is hard enough.
You should have a conversation with my husband. And in all fairness, I at one point thought I would make a perfect Real Housewife. Let's be real, I would. I have an Irish temper.
You would.
I would.
You would.
I would.
You're very funny.
Okay.
You're very funny, and you should be on TV.
But let me just say this. For me, I watch it because it's an outlet, a stress outlet. I find it like ridiculous in a lot of ways. And I don't know. I think it's a weird thing. Like, people don't understand why people watch it, but people that do watch it get how like women like pull each other down. I know it's not healthy, but for me, it's a stress outlet. There's nothing better to me than watching Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. It's like my happy place. And it is ridiculous. They're all fighting with each other. They're being mean, but that I probably shouldn't be watching it, but if like all other women, or not all other women, but there's a large majority of women that are like, want to talk the next day about what they saw on Real Housewives or Vanderpump Rules, right? What's going on?
Queer black men on Twitter.
Yeah.
Having conversations about Real Housewives of Atlanta constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah.
So I understand that these are safe spaces for you. That's your safe space. For some kid in the middle of America, there's a show on HBO Max called We're Here.
Yeah, I love it.
Shangela about the drag queen in Eureka.
Yeah, I love it.
Where they're going into these rural and sort of, I don't want to say,
well, they are
less progressive areas.
Yeah. In their cars, in their costumes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're allowing these people to feel like, yes, you can be yourself and it's okay. And there are places, maybe not here in this town today, but yes, today you can do it because we're here, we got cameras and we're going to do it with you and we're going to make you feel fabulous. Maybe we're going to have to figure out how your town is going to eventually become cool with this, but you have to create safe spaces for your kids. Drag shows, believe it or not, like RuPaul's Drag Race, are safe spaces for some kids. Drag queens reading books to some kids in a library. Believe me, if I was a child living in where I grew up, Pasadena, and my mom took me to the Altadena Library and there was a man in drag reading Charlotte's Web to me, First of all, I'd probably be scared because there's so much makeup and you know, a drag queen in the daytime is often scary, right? But there would be a sense in my mind, in my heart, that, oh, there are different ways for men to express themselves and to perform and to take care of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good thing.
We're just like
trans folks are not.
I could like talk to you.
I want to talk about this all day.
I could talk
about
this all day, and I'm bummed because we didn't get into like stuff, but I think this is important because of these reasons. If we don't talk about this stuff and get real and everything's just like surface, then we have a problem. I'm not going to say who, but I was watching an award show with somebody, and the person said, this was a while back, and the person said, "Oh, I changed the channel. I hate how political Hollywood is." Yeah. And if you know me, and Ryan Murphy, who's like, I'm sorry, but I'm like his biggest fan. And my husband was on American Horror Story, and I'm like, why can't he come back?
Yeah.
You know, because I love him so much. But he did a speech about like the don't say gay in his acceptance speech. I think it was the SAG, it might have been the Golden Globes. I can't remember which one. And the person I was with said, turn this off. This is just all becoming too political. And I did not have a choice to like be in the room or not be in the room. And I just burst out crying.
Yeah.
And I said, my gay friends, like Michael and Josh and Bowman, like these are people, Wayne, Evan, these are people that I met in my life, and they are my family. I mean, I really get emotional about this because they are my family. And if you are going to not be supportive of my family, you're not being supportive of me. You're not loving me. You know, and that's, I think like we all, like if people are saying things, it's our duty to like stand up for what we believe, even though it can be scary, you know, and uncomfortable. If you're in a situation like I was.
And that was your question, right?
Yeah.
That was your question. How do we deal with those different views at the table, basically? And this is how you deal with it.
You deal with it like that, you know, and I didn't mean to cry. I'm an emotional person, but like to my core, like this is like what we're supposed to be doing as human beings. And I think until we all stand up, and if it means us being emotional, I think the person that was watching that award show with me understood by the end. So, I could talk to you all day. Really quickly, because I was like, oh, we're only going to be an hour. Just one more question. What are you doing acting wise? Are you auditioning? Are you like, you're saying there's a new Noah's Ark movie coming out?
I don't know when this is going to, it has not been announced.
Okay.
So I don't know when this is going to air, but oops, did I say that?
It's coming out soon. Yes, sorry about that.
So we shot this movie in a few months ago.
Okay.
It was actually supposed to come out last month, but it's been pushed. So it'll be out, I think, I'm assuming because it's expected to be out within the next month and a half, 2 months, that the announcement will be coming soon.
Okay.
Unless, you know, like Batgirl, it just goes away and doesn't get it released at all. Who knows? But yes, so there's that coming. And yeah, I've been auditioning lately. It's, you know, since COVID, and even really before COVID, as you know, because you live with an actor, auditions we're no longer driving to auditions. All of our auditions are now in the house. So you're probably having to read sides with Ron all the time.
Ron is on ice right now. He kind of is not acting.
Oh.
He quit. Yeah. So I don't think
did he officially quit? No, he didn't quit. No, he didn't.
He's very busy.
I know he's doing real estate.
Yeah, he's so busy with that. He didn't have time. And there was a point where he was up for something and then he lost it. And he was like, I can't, it's not for me right now. That doesn't mean it's not forever. Life. And when you said in the very beginning, because I'm going to end with this thought, you said as an actor, you never you always feel like you're not successful enough, right?
Yeah.
And my husband says the same things to me. And I watched for years the heartache and the pain of auditioning and like getting so close to things and then losing them. But what I want to remind you of is the people in the population that can actually say that they've done what you've done and how much you've affected, especially for you, for what you do, some young boy in middle America that was afraid to come out and was inspired by you and your character or your story.
Do you know I hear from people who have had that experience all the time.
Yeah, it's huge.
And how humbling and how gratifying that is. It's something that you don't really ever expect as a performer or an artist. You think, oh, I'm just going to do what I do and get by. But then because of that show and because of some of the work I've gotten subsequent to that show, I have the very distinct honor of having touched people in a way that actually allows them to feel like they're able to be themselves in ways that they didn't before, which is really what we want for the world, right?
Yeah.
We want everyone to feel like they can be themselves without hurting other people. That's what we're talking about. Nobody's here to hurt you. There are people here to hurt you.
Yeah. And by the way, nobody's here, by the way, to take your gun away from you. I just want to say that because I have had feedback in the past about that. I'm not trying to take your guns away.
Yeah.
We're just trying to like live our lives, be parents, be good people. And I think that's why
I feel safe and let our kids be safe.
And let our kids like be able to walk down the street safely and in all communities. Yeah. And in closing, I adore you. I think
as I do you,
surprise! I'm so happy you came on. In closing, everyone, like I always like to say, be happy by making other people happy. Like life is short. We have one short life. I'm basically, hopefully, longer than midway through mine, but who knows with my Chardonnay drinking lately, because I have been drinking a little bit too much, but I'm going back on the wagon, FYI. But be happy by making other people happy. Thank you, Darryl. You're the best. Surprise!
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.